Welcome to the Birth Lounge. Now let's talk all things birth with your host, Andrew Davey. This podcast is brought to you by iBirth Professionals.
I've got a guest superstar, even though she doesn't think so. I'm so blessed that Gemma Wilson said yes to this. She's doing incredible things in the world of birth, and I happened to get an email from her, and I thought, wow, how cool would it be to bring her on the Birth Lounge and have a conversation? And she said yes, and here she is. Gemma, thank you so much for giving us your wonderful, wonderful time to have a conversation today.
Thanks for having me. It's an absolute privilege to be here too. So yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Now, I know you said you're a little bit anxious and nervous, and that's okay. And I think that makes it real and raw, which is the best part of the conversations that we have. We have no idea what we're going to chat about, but Gemma, seeing all the things you do, I mean, not only, as I said to you before, your website is amazing. And then I found out that you were the creator behind it. My goodness. Yeah. What can this woman not do? Maybe just give me that list that's a bit smaller. So maybe we'd love to hear a bit about Gemma, and for listeners that maybe haven't yet had the privilege to get to know you, I'd love to know, what you do today, but what brought you into that world of birth as well? That's always a fascinating story.
Definitely. So for me, I had a really lovely birth experience with my first. I was really privileged to encounter a really great midwife on the Central Coast, and I gave birth in a birth centre. So for me, I had like a really magnificent and beautiful water birth, and I came walking away from that really thinking this is how birth should be for everybody. And I really tried to start to search into becoming a birth educator, and believe it or not, I really struggled to find a course. And it was more because everything that I looked at kind of had different entries into it, but it was either I had to be trained, in the scope of birth as a midwife, or, be a prenatal yoga instructor. So for me, it was really hard to find a course to be into, and I gave up on it, believe it or not. I gave up on that dream. I was like, nah, it's not going to happen. It's too hard. I've got like a newborn baby, so I can't pursue this anymore. And I literally put it on the back burner. And then I had my second, and I remember the night that it happened, like my sister had visited, she was down from Queensland, and they were sitting watching a movie, her and my husband, and I just sort of like got my youngest into bed and the other one was asleep, and then just sort of toddled off to the computer and started to look into things again. There was just something just triggered instinctively to go look at this again. Now's your time. And it was there that I found Tanya's course, and it just, like that, it was just like a boom moment. And I remember getting into bed that night with the biggest smile on my face and just saying, this is it. This is what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go and be a birth educator. I'm going to go and help women to have these empowering births and to understand all they need to understand about birth. And then once I did Tanya's training, I then went and did some doula training as well, which again, it kind of just spontaneously happened. It wasn't really something that I ever really looked into, going and being a doula. And I think it was more curiosity than anything that kind of led me down that path. And then, did my first birth and just fell in love with it. And it's, when you're in that space, you kind of really see that support that you can give can just make such a huge difference. And just that knowledge that a woman can have, again, can make a massive difference to how her birth can unfold and what she can ultimately bring into that space and into herself as well. So, yeah, so here I am now, and I dabble in everything, as you can see.
Oh, it's amazing. I've heard this so many times, especially with doulaing. It's like people that fall into it, but they say that it's like putting on an old pair of shoes. It just feels so right. Yeah. Just before we get onto what you're doing today, tell me about that first birth experience. Like, there's doulas in training, and there's people that, that are about to step in, and that act of courage. What was that like? The first experience?
It was quite, it was very surreal, but you kind of you just lead with those instincts, I think, as well. You almost yourself go into that mothering mode of how can I protect this space for this woman, and how can I ensure that she is, going to walk away in that positive mindset and look back on that in a positive manner as way. And for me, the first birth I actually did was supporting a woman who'd gone through birth trauma. So, and this was her second baby as well. So one, it was, a big thing for me to come into, being, a fresh doula. But at the same time, I took it on knowing that I could help this woman and make a big difference as well for her. So, she ended up having a really beautiful healing birth as well with her second. So, that was a big thing that just really resonated, I think, for me as well, and made me go, yeah, this is where I need to be. Like, this is my path that I need to be on now. So, yeah.
And was that, Gemma? How long ago was the...
3 years ago now, that would be. Yeah.
That's amazing. And maybe just quickly, so what are you doing? I know you're doing so many things now, but because I know Birthability, that's your daughtering, right? And you're also coordinator with Lamaze?
Yeah, so I help out with their marketing side of things. I sit on the board of directors and everything with Lamaze Australia. I'm also a volunteer for Lamaze International as well. So, so I'm kind of like this little...
My goodness.
Everywhere.
In between bringing up 2 children? Is that
yeah,
right? And how old are you now?
So I've got Flynn, who is 6, and I've got Olive, who will be 5 in December. So
wow, amazing.
Yeah, got my hands full, but
yeah,
they're at a great age, I think, too. Like, I'm still learning a lot of them, as well as essentially, like when I think back to my son, I think he really is the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing now. And then again, my daughter's the same. She's the one that I think really put that fire back into me at that time, when it was, really my time to get into everything as well. So I'm very thankful for that.
Wonderful. Now, and I'm very blessed to be able to, in between all of that, take an hour of your time for this. So I'm really curious, Gemma, obviously I have no idea what we're going to chat about, but I guess when it comes to birth itself, you're passionate about birth. What are you most passionate about? I guess, what will we love to chat about? What's something that really, is pressing, and that's just so important that needs to be heard?
For me, I really think it's about that education value, because, I feel like it's something that's really underestimated. And especially when you become pregnant, your first instinct isn't to go, I need to do an education class. Most people are like, I need to go and look at these prams. I need to go and sort out a cot. And it's, essentially, that education side is what's really going to drive your power through your birth. So I think if, society really needs to flip that and really, have women look at taking that value and, being educated, because essentially it's an investment, really, because, when you become educated, you're not just empowering yourself and giving yourself the knowledge and the tools for that birth, but, you're also helping to create that positive outcome that you need to go into parenting as well. So, and it's something then you can take on into your next birth, and so on and so on. So it's not something that's just serves one purpose like a cot.
Yeah.
It's a multi-dimensional thing that, can really make a massive difference and really change some outcomes for birth nowadays. So, yeah.
So how do we shift that? I'm curious. So how does it become, because I totally agree. And I have a lot of friends that have gone through, and then when I have discussions with, and they talk about their birth, it's like their first birth, it's like, we didn't really do anything. We just, arrived at the appointments in the hospital and then gave birth and sort of did what we were told. So how does it become normal? Or how does it become something that women think of and just...
Yeah, it's one of those things, because I kind of feel like as well, we have like social media and, that society impact as well, that's sort of created this as well of, and the same, like baby showers. You know, that's a must do for when you become pregnant. But again, if you shift how birth really should be, you know, you should be celebrating the mother and the journey that the mother's having. And then, you know, a gift really then should be, you know, something to dote on the mother and provide her with something to empower her for her birth journey ahead, not here's a really cute tiny little outfit that's going to have a million press studs on it and be really hard and like be a nightmare to put on in the middle of the night. But hey, like, you know, that's all those little things that I just, yeah, it's hard because, again, you know, when you look at education as well in hospitals, you can see that there's a flaw there because, you know, again, you're learning things that are going to suit the hospital environment. Yeah. And, you know, are going to suit their policies and procedures. And, you know, that's another thing where I think women really need to take on that independent childbirth course as well, because that's really going to help expand so much more for a woman to understand, you know, what is in a birth and what their body is really capable of, rather than, okay, you're going to come in and we're going to hook you up to this and this and this, and this is what you have to do. Whereas, yeah, if you do that independent course, you kind of have that more knowledge of, well, I don't essentially need to be hooked up to a monitor unless there's an indicator for it. And I know that I need to ask about the benefits and the risk and the alternative and listen to my intuition and, you know, delve further into that questioning of things. But yeah, I think, you know, our health system, I guess, really needs to promote the benefits of education a lot more as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, you know, people have a problem, I guess, with paying for things that isn't, I guess, like a physical product as well sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, you see, you're quite happy to go tap, 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 or hand over your money for like bits and bobs and not really think much about it. But when it comes to someone giving you information, it's kind of like, do I really need to do this? And I find a lot of people Google way too much, you know, and it's just not, it's not going to give women that really in-depth scope of things that they really need to know and understand. And I constantly hear people say, oh, what could you teach someone about birth? You just go in and you have a baby. It's like, there's so much more than that. You know, understanding how your body works, understanding those dynamics of those hormones and, you know, how everything has to shift, and then creating that space that you ultimately need and getting those hormones to work within that space as well. And, you know, delving into like breastfeeding and that postpartum care that you need as well, but also, you know, understanding what's happening to your body in late pregnancy as well, so that, you know, okay, I need to slow down now. Because I think as well, you know, like we put so much pressure on a woman even while they're pregnant. You know, you hear people working up until like 39 weeks and, you know, some women to 40 weeks in some cases, and you kind of like, just stop. Like, slow it all down and just let your body do what it needs to do, and yeah, let it flow.
Yeah, this is so awesome. You know, you said something before and I never even considered it, which you mentioned about how, you know, like a baby shower, you know, it's this innocent thing that culturally has become something, but you're right, it's not celebrating motherhood and the journey. That's a really good point. And thank you for sharing it, because it's got me thinking a million miles an hour. And you know, when you look at culturally with birth, and I guess I'm not just talking Australia, you know, I talk in the globe. What do you think is the biggest challenge that we face today as to why women cannot have an experience like you did, for example? Because I get a sense it's like you're right when it comes to education. It's almost like, unfortunately, it has to almost be, you know, I use the word traumatic, but, you know, an experience that is not favorable for them to then, you know, regain that from their next birth, which is probably not an ideal way, in my opinion. But what needs to change globally, in your opinion? And, you know, I know there's a lot of things, but in your heart.
I think, you know, I mean, it's been really great to see big conversations been happening about birth. So I think, you know, people are really, you know, starting to delve a lot more and research a lot more, which has been a good thing to come out of that.
And what were they, Gemma? Or who, as far as conversations, was that at what level? What was that?
So just like, on social media, for example, you see a lot of like influencers, I guess, like really sharing their birth story and all that sort of stuff in a normal way, I guess, whereas, it's not so glamorized. You kind of see people setting up all their that pretty halo-y light and all that sort of stuff. And and I think, if we look at influencers and being able to have that power as well, and it's the same with, like, if we're seeing people on social media and you see it with women having to bounce back, by a certain stage. Whereas if you really look at it in the reality of, it's taking you 9 months to grow a baby. So realistically, it should be taking you 9 months to stop and slow down and pause and, enjoy those moments as well. But yeah, I think it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. So I'd love to, if I can, delve into maybe your first birth as well. It's such a beautiful experience. What were the elements that allowed that to happen? I mean, obviously a big part of it's you, and also, around. What are the big elements of that allowed that to happen?
I think for me, it was the fact that I had a midwife that really trusted in that role of birth. And I think the fact that I was in a birth center as well obviously really helped that. So, I think for women to have more access to that would make a massive difference as well. Even in the terms of like birth trauma, like if you think of a woman being able to be in that environment, knowing who her care provider is, and, being able to be in a safe space that, ultimately does feel home-like, can really make a big difference to all those birthing outcomes and how they're going to look at their birth in the long run and look back on it. And I think even just setting that mode and that feeling was a very big different thing for me, as opposed to going into, a full hospital setting and into a birthing suite where you walk in and straight away you feel that urgency almost happen, even though, you're low risk and there's nothing, of any sort of an emergency happening. You can feel it because you can feel that presence around you. You can feel people rushing left, right, and center still, and you're seeing people walking in and out of the doors over and over again. So, I think ultimately to have a really good positive outcome or experience, you really need to be able to trust a care provider. But, again, I think it's also really hard because you have zoning that happens with hospitals as well. So, for a lot of women, they don't have that option of having a birth centre that might be near them to go in and birth at. They might only have just the local hospital that's near them, and, might not be able to get into like a MGP program, so that they don't get that opportunity to know their midwife intimately as well. I think publicly funded home birth really should be something that Australia really needs to look at for each state a lot more thoroughly as well, because, you've got women who can be low risk that can then birth at home, which can also then, I think, ultimately really shift things in hospital then for those women that may be classed as higher risk as well, because then that's also giving, a lot of pressure then coming off the hospital system, I believe, as well, because you've got low risk women who then can be able to birth at home. And then that's going to open up more space for, women to have that continuity of care with a midwife than if they are higher risk, because, there's not going to be as much pressure in the hospital system in that sense. That's how I see it anyway. But
yeah, that's awesome. And I love, like you said, it's not as if it's the hospital's fault, but it's just that, the feeling you get when you go in, it's never like a welcoming, right? And, it's just, so I love you highlighting that. For me, I'm very pro doula, right? The world I'm exposed to and everything I've seen. If it's okay, I think you've got a lot of wisdom in that world. I think that if we look at doulaing and your journey into doulaing as well, as well as mothers listening into your story, I think there's probably new doulas that are, sitting there and going, wow, and she just took that step. And Gemma, I often hear one of two ways. It's like people are drawn to the world of birth because they had a wonderful experience. They want to share it with others, which is, I guess where you fall into, or they had a challenging experience and they don't want that to happen to anyone else as well. I guess, what would your advice be for those people? You had that intuitive thought of stepping into the world of doulaing. What's your advice to new doulas that are just starting out, doulas that have just stepped into the world of doulaing now with your wisdom and experience you have? What would you share with them?
I think for me, I reckon every doula should go and do a really good birth education training. And it's only because I feel like it really delves right into that scope of birth that you really need. And I think then as well, you kind of go into your first birth then feeling a lot more confident in how things can change and, I guess essentially like holding things back or stopping things and, helping the woman in that sense as well. And I think just never stop learning. Like even for me now, like I feel like birth is it's the biggest teacher. You can never have one birth that will be the same as the next. It will constantly be teaching you. So, I really feel like doing one lot of training and reading, a few books for that training, it's never enough. You really need to essentially just continue to keep that learning process happening as well. And I think really, ensuring that you've got a really good connection as well with that person, because, at the end of the day, you're ultimately being invited into a very intimate and sacred and private space. And, they are essentially really handing over a large section of their birth to you that they need you to support them on. And it's the same with the partner. The partner really wants to have that encouragement coming through as well. And, that additional guidance from someone there that isn't a medical staff that's going to sit there and, say, oh, you're in my way, can you push out of the way, hop out of the way, or anything like that. Having, I think, a doula for a partner can really make a huge difference as well. And I think, again, it's something that's underestimated. You kind of hear like a lot of partners go, oh, do we really need to have a person in there? But they are ultimately there to support the partner and the birthing woman as well. And I think as well for a new doula, if you're going into, you're supporting hospitals a lot, I think go and meet with the hospital staff as much as you can as well and form that bonding that you need to have with the staff as well, because that's just going to make that transition a lot easier. And plus you're building a really great relationship ultimately then with a midwife, and, you're going to know how they're going to work, and you'll be able to also, soften things, I guess, for that midwife as well. And especially, if you think midwives go in and they have birth happen every day for them, over and over and over again, and it can just ultimately take, one person to walk into that birth space in a really calm and supportive manner to really change the feel of that environment. So I wholeheartedly believe that that's, something that can ultimately impact a midwife as well, and, just get them to go, oh, okay, this is how it's meant to be. I remember this. It's not meant to be how it was before, where I was running around hectic and a bit frazzled. It's meant to be slow and calm and beautiful and inviting and safe. So yeah, I just think building those connections is a really important thing for a new doula.
That's an amazing point, Gemma. The challenge I often see, as a guy's observation in the world of birth is it's almost that, it's us against them. I sometimes see, it's the medical and non-medical, and there's this divide and righteousness and that comes from it. But, at the end of the day, if it's purely mother-centric, right, that everybody is a part of that. So I love you shared that. When it comes to the protecting of an experience for a woman, what's most important? Your gifts that you have in holding that space. What's most important that you bring into that world?
ultimately, I don't believe in any, I kind of walk in the birth space with my bag of tools and tricks, but I think at the end of the day, the most important things that I'm walking in with are my ears, which is, I know that sounds really strange.
Not at all. I get it.
I think at the end of the day, it is so important to be listening to that woman and to hearing what she needs, to hearing what she's saying, listening into all those sounds, because they're ultimately as well, they're going to help lead you on how you need to support that woman as well. And then my hands, I guess, ultimately too, because, again, a woman might just need to be touched, to be held in order for her to feel safe in that environment. And again, by listening to that, I also know how to use my hands in that process too. So I think, and again, as a new doula, you kind of go in all bright-eyed and, you have about 10 bags that you kind of walking in like this turtle almost, because you're so slow and you've got like humps over here and humps over there. But I think at the end of the day, you just don't need all those things, because really it is ultimately, down to what you're hearing from that woman, and then, what touch you can do for her to soften things for her and for her to be in that safe space as well. So.
Wow, that's an amazing point. So listening and knowledge. I love you shared knowledge as well. So help me understand a little bit more then. Why is that knowledge so important?
For a woman?
Why does it give you, and what does it give them, I guess, when it comes to knowledge?
I think for me as well, like if I can teach someone about birth and how their body is going to work, I ultimately then know that, they have an understanding of that process and what their body needs to do. And I think they're also more aware of, how to be working with their body a lot better as well. Or when certain things come up, they, again, they know, okay, well, hang on a minute, I know that there's an alternative to this as well. So by having that knowledge for a woman, I think can be a really big game changer. And there's knowledge is power, as the saying goes, and it really ultimately is, because if you think of, your provider that comes in, all they feed back to you is knowledge, and they ultimately then have the power and the upper hand. Whereas, if you have a woman who is knowledgeable and is aware of everything that's happening a lot more, she ultimately then can take back that power in her birthing space as well, and have more control over that, rather than the care provider having all the power. And the same for me, like when I walk in, for me to have all of that knowledge again is like a really big game changer, because by keeping up to date on things as well, I know certain things that will work for that woman a lot better, getting her into a better position, for example, to help ease any of the pain or anything like that. Comfort measures, for example, as well, like making sure that I'm using all aspects of that as well to help reduce any of the pain that's coming through for her as well. So without all that knowledge, I have nothing as well. So it's a really important thing, I think, for a woman to be going into her birth with. Yeah. Wow,
that's really awesome. When you say, before you said you've got the people that just say, what can you really teach about birth, right? And I guess if there's the message of that to that person that might be listening in, that's thinking about and considering, but wondering whether or not, the pram's more important than doing the education. Help me see what do you want for them, your desire for them that that knowledge can bring? Like, what's the outcome you really want for a mother?
To have that positive birth experience.
Yeah. And define that, I love to know. So Gemma's definition, if I open the dictionary and it says positive birth experience, what would it say? What would be the definition?
For me, a positive birth experience for that woman would be, again, was she listened to? Mm-hmm. Was she able to be heard as well? Was she able to say what she had to say? And was she part of that decision-making process for it to be a positive birthing environment and outcome for her as well. So was she supported enough? And was she, you know, cared for enough? Because I think, you know, you have support and then you have care, and I believe that they're two different things ultimately, because, you know, you have someone who will care for you like a midwife will care for you, and then you have someone who will support you like a doula will support you. And, you know, at the end of the day, they are two totally different things, but in a birthing space, they need to work together as well. So yeah, and I think that can really make that positive birth outcome for that woman as well.
That's awesome. And I'll bring another element in, and that is the people like me, the birth partners. You bring the birth partner into that same conversation. How do you, I guess, empower them also? Because I know they're part of that positive birth experience as well. And, you know, from a support level, maybe there's the birth partner that feels like the third wheel, that feels like, oh, I get the doula because then I don't have to, or, you know, I don't know what to do, or what's your advice to them? What do you say to them?
I think, you know, and this is where I really do believe like doulas in a birth space can really make a big difference for partners, because, you know, you've got someone who can, you know, encourage the partner to be more involved. Whereas, you know, and I totally get it, you know, like you're, from a partner's point of view, you're watching a person that you love and that you care for go through this process, and they look like they're in pain. And your first instinct is, I need to save them. How do I stop this from happening? What do I need to do? How do I stop everything from hurting? And it's different for a woman because, you know, they're in their body. So they're understanding all these things that are happening, and, you know, they're able to ride those waves a lot, you know, better than someone watching from the outside. And I think by having a doula there for the partner, you know, they have that chance then to go, it's okay. She's all right. She's just doing what she needs to do, and she's riding those waves the way that she needs to ride them. And, you know, you also have a doula that can also give a partner some confidence as well, you know, in terms of like, you know, rubbing their back or something, or, you know, ultimately just making that eye contact as well, which is sometimes all that a woman needs. You know, they just need to have that one moment of eye contact just to give them that drive that they need from their partner as well. And trust. I think a doula can actually help a partner trust that process of birth a lot more as well. And I think that, you know, again, a massive thing in birth, and you see a lot of partners just not being able to trust that process enough as well. And again, it's different for a woman because, you know, they're in that moment, they're in that body of going through all those emotions and everything that comes with birth. That again, from an outsider, it's really hard to go, well, this doesn't seem right. How do I save you again? So yeah.
What an amazing point. I guess a lot of that comes from, you know, what we see on Hollywood, right? And movies, and, you know, of what the experiences. Yeah, exactly, right? So
right.
Yeah. No,
sorry. It's just every time I say to someone, oh, I'm trained in Lamaze, they go, oh, like the...
Yes.
No.
Nothing like that.
That is not it. That is Hollywood that has done that.
So I guess on that same topic, you know, when it comes to birth partners, I think I loved what you just shared. And if you use that word trust, how is it they're able to trust more in that process? How will they become empowered to be more trusting?
And see, this is where education comes into it.
Yeah.
Because if you have your partner in that class with you, they're going and seeing how, you know, those late stages of pregnancy that lead up to the whole labor process and the birth process and that postpartum process. And they get to see how, you know, hormones need to shift into that special gear and, you know, essentially lock in to spots in order for birth to be unfolding. So I think if you have a partner coming on an education class, they can ultimately trust that birth a lot more than, you know, someone who doesn't take a class at all, and then they tend to just go with the flow. So, you know, it's hard to describe, I suppose, because like if you don't have any knowledge on anything, then you can't trust in it at all, because you don't know how it's going to work. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know, I guess what could happen, or how to change things, or, how to make that moment and that time better, I guess. So, whereas if you take that class, you can trust in it a lot more, because you go, oh, I remember this in class. This is where this is going to happen now. And now I know that I need to go and help her do this and this. So yeah, that trust forms a lot better as well. And I think as well, you have that chance for partners to also open up a conversation too, and have that discussion with their birthing partners as well, about, oh, what is it that you'll need from me? What is it that I can help you with? Or, giving them those gentle reminders that they need during the birth process as well, because they've learnt all those things in a class and they can take them into the birth space.
Yeah, that's an amazing point. So if I hear what you're saying, it's that you're really reflecting on that gives them certainty and going, oh,
Yeah.
I learned about this, so therefore it's normal. Feeling.
Yeah, exactly. It's normal.
Yeah.
And that's something that you just don't hear anymore in birth, because, again, thanks to Hollywood,
Yeah.
we see it as an emergency. We see someone being frantically wheeled in on a wheelchair and like, happening. And then you see the stirrups, and, our brain then starts to shift to see that as normal, instead of like what really is a true normal of, letting things being a natural process. So you lose that trust in that process too, because, all of a sudden things are again shifting to what you see in the movies. So then you have to build all those levels back up again and get them to understand what a normal birth process is, and like building up that trust process again with their partners and with birth itself.
Yeah. I have one question when it comes to primate, and you're probably impressed that I know that. When it comes to the first, how important is, in your opinion, how important is it to have a positive birth experience for your first child? How important? Scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, 10.
And some.
Yeah.
And I love it. I know the answer to it. I just asked that question because I love to know Gemma's why. Why is it so important? What does it mean for women, for motherhood, for the child, for everything? What's your take on it?
And this is where I really think, it shouldn't be a question of, will I have a positive birth experience? It should just be a normal thing.
It's a given, right?
Every woman, yeah, exactly. Every woman shouldn't have to strive to have a positive birth outcome, or a positive birth in general. It's something that just should be the normal thing, the given thing all the time. But I think ultimately, it really does lay those foundations though for how you breastfeed, for how you go into your postpartum, for how you go into parenting, and even just your relationship after a birth. All of that can be completely affected by not having a positive birth experience. So, for women to have their first and to have a positive experience is, like you said, 10 plus and a million more. It should be the everyday factor. And again, it ultimately comes down to that knowledge and to how her care provider has treated them. Have they treated them with respect? Have they included them in the decision-making process? Have they listened to them? Have they been hearing them properly?
And so my assumption is it's okay to question things, right?
100%.
With
100%.
knowledge, you have the potential to do it.
Yeah. And I think, again, that's, and I believe this is a big society thing as well, because you go into a hospital and you put so much trust into that person who's caring for you. So everything that they tell you, you trust in them and you believe in what they're saying to you. But I think as well, by questioning things, you can sort of delve into whether are they giving you the thing that's going to make things easier for them ultimately and quicker for them, or is there alternatives to things that you can try and do? And, obviously the more medical side of things, the giving them the most medicalized method is going to be the easiest route for the care provider at the end of the day than letting something being natural, unfolding, and, taking time. So, and again, we go into hospital and we're in hurry mode as well. So, I think, again, our hospitals just need to trust in that process a lot more and realize that women aren't textbook cases. They read all those textbooks and take all that knowledge on board, but we're all individual, and birth is an individual process as well to each person that comes into that space. You never have the same birth unfold. So I think they just need to realize, we're not the little textbook anymore.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. And who typically would find you, Gemma, when it comes to birth? I mean, I know that everybody's so different, yet who goes looking for a doula? Who goes looking for Lamaze classes? Are they, if you look at, say the first time mothers, what has to happen in that journey? I'm just trying to imagine those people that go searching and looking and then connect with you and find you. Like, what's that journey for them that came to the point of going, this is a must, as opposed to the pram and that, most importantly?
I think it's definitely down to women wanting to have a different birth experience as well. And in terms of like being educated, it is definitely like a woman who wants to be more educated on what's happening to her birth and, to have a better, more control, I guess, in her birth as well. As much as I hate the word control, it's just, I think, it's a way of a woman trying to bring back that control to herself as well. And I think right now for doulas, COVID's obviously having a very big play in things as well. So, women, I think, are ultimately seeking out more support to come their way, and especially in the postpartum period right now, because, you've got families that can't come in and support each other how they would normally support each other as well. So, definitely postpartum doulas are on the rise as well right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and this, I guess I always I'm a bit of an optimist when it comes to things. And if I look at COVID, we can look at all the challenges we're facing. I've, read, especially in the world of birth. I hadn't made that link. So you mean that because of some of the restrictions that have been put in place, women are choosing to bring the power back to themselves through.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I didn't even know that. That's awesome.
And it's sad as well, I guess, because like for me, every person should have a doula. And I know, again, if you go back into the birth world, there's so many people that get mixed about that as well. But I wholeheartedly believe that every woman should be able to have good education for them that's completely unbiased, that's not bound by hospital policies or procedures, and have a doula there to support them as well, whether it be, through their pregnancy journey or just the birth or in that early postpartum period. It's something that, I think as well could ultimately work really well within the hospital system too. Because, again, you can take a lot of pressure off midwives and that whole hospital environment in general, because, that woman's got that additional support coming through to them in a way that they need to have it as well. So,
yeah. You know what I want to highlight, Gemma, which is so amazing, and you know this about yourself, it's that at not one point in this conversation have I heard what you get out of doulaing. Now, I know spiritually it would fill you and all those things, but everything about you, it's the first time I've ever really considered how important it is building relationships, even outside of the birth. You show up with a client to birth and you're at the hospital and, and then you're meeting and interacting with staff. But for what I get a sense from you, it's that it's so important to build the relationships. You're doing everything and you're doing the work pre, post birth, all elements and areas of it, just to make sure that space is set up and safe for women. I think that's really awesome. But I also do want to ask that question. What does doulaing do for you? I know you give so much of yourself. How does it fill you up?
Oh, geez, that's going to be like a rabbit hole, I reckon.
Maybe we just go down.
What have you got? I think for me, I love that once all the birth side of things is all done, I take great joy in when I get to step back and see mum and the partner and the baby just, really flourishing. There's a certain feel I feel like that happens as well in that moment. Like you can just see all those connections happening and those bonding moments, babies seeing mum for the first time and seeing dad for the first time, and they're also meeting their baby for the first time as well. So I really enjoy just seeing that connection happening at the end, but also seeing a woman really coming into herself during that birthing process and really pushing beyond what she thought she was ever capable of as well. So yeah, to keep it short and sweet.
I sense the emotion in what you're sharing, which is so cool. And I love that, all the things that you've opened up in this conversation, there's things that are a perspective that I've never considered before. But when it comes to the art form of doulaing, it's that the heart is the most important part, and it shows in what you share and everything you do. So I honor you for that, Gemma. It's really,
thank you.
Clients are so privileged. It's really cool. I guess, I know I'm very respectful of your time. I ask so many questions.
Well, I could talk all day.
Yeah, maybe share, what do you envision for Gemma? If you look at, say, 10 years from now, what do you envision? What have you created? What have you left in the way of legacy, knowing you've really made a difference, as you know you already have, but in the world of birth, what would you love to know that you can look back and go, wow?
For me, again, it's that impact of the afterbirth again, because there's so much more than just supporting them in that moment as well. Like if you can support them during that birthing process to help them achieve something positive, I am absolutely elated that they can then go into that parenting journey positive. And and that also then ultimately for me, I feel like I've then impacted that child as well, because they have their parents who are going into that parenting side of things in a positive way as well. So then that child's going to feel that energy as well from those parents, and then also when they have their children, then that's going to flow onto them, and so on and so forth. So for me, if I can continue to leave that footprint, I'll be very happy. And also just for me to be placing that on my children, I guess, as well, for them to see that birth is a normal thing that happens every day. It happens every day all over the world. It's it's a hard experience, but it's a beautiful and positive experience as well. So for them to see it that way, I've already had my daughter's got this grand plan. She keeps telling me, and this is someone who's about to turn 5, but reality probably going on 35 plus, I reckon. She's said to me that she's going to look after the babies and I'll look after the mums. So that's going to be her plan. So, and that that really fills me with joy, because she's seeing that as well, and she's seeing those positive things, and I guess she's also seeing how it lights me up as well. And for me, for the first time in my life, I actually feel like I'm really doing something with a purpose as well. I've worked in retail, I used to manage a fitness gym, and I never felt like I was really doing anything with a lot of impact, or doing something that I felt like I really had that passion and that drive in, whereas now I really feel like what I'm doing is purposeful, and I'm doing it for that reason as well. So yeah.
I'm so glad I asked that question, Gemma. What's amazing, in the back of my mind, I was about to ask the question about how your children see and perceive you and what you do, and you just answered it intuitively. Knew. So it was absolutely amazing. And I got two final questions, if I can. So, Gemma, what would be your advice that you would give to new mothers, new parents to be? And the second part would be, what would be your advice you would give to caregivers, doulas, anyone that supports birth? What would be your advice for both of those groups?
So for parents, it would be invest in independent childbirth education. 100%. Forget the pram, forget the cot. Look at education. Communication as well. I think birth is a real big opportunity for a mother and a partner to really get to know each other all over again as well, because there's big changes happening there with a mum, there's big changes happening with a partner as well. So to open up those communication gates and really have good in-depth conversations of what that person will need, a plan as well, make sure that you've got a good supportive network around you, but also plan your postpartum. And I know a doula, like I said, would be my dream for everybody to have, but I also know some people it's just not on the menu for them as well. Some people kind of get a bit, isn't that all hippie? And it's like, no, it's not at all. But I think, like if they can bring someone who, isn't going to be trying to control that birth environment for them as well, someone who's going to be unbiased. So, to support them on their journey during that time, even if it's just helping them, through labour, essentially at home or something before they leave to hospital or anything like that. And, not necessarily a doula, just whatever they can get around them at that time in that space. For care providers as well, I would believe that, it would be, I think for them, I would really just love to see them trust birth a lot more, to slow things down. And to trust what the woman's doing as well. That woman is in that moment. She's in her body. She's in her element. She's feeling everything. She's feeling her baby. She's riding all those waves and everything as well. So she's got a lot of instinct that's coming through as well. Whereas, if you're looking at it from an outside point of view, instead of going, oh, she's been like this for over an hour and a bit, TikTok, just let it slow down, trust in it. And I know that's hard in a hospital. Like that's, I'm living in a fantasy world, I think.
It's awesome advice. It's unreal. Gemma, this has been an absolute blessing. I've taken so much away from this. I think if anything that shows, and I'm sure listeners listening into this, it's just how genuine and sincere and authentic you are in wanting to make a difference in the world of birth. It really...
And how much I ramble.
Not at all. I took so much away from what you shared. It was absolutely awesome. For everybody listening in, underneath here, I'm just going to have some details where you can get in touch with Gemma. So Birthability, is that right? Your amazing website. You're the creator. Oh my goodness. Your previous roles, was one of them as website designer? Because that was just...
No, it wasn't. I'm just a creative person, and it's weird. Like after I've been to a birth, I actually macrame, which is, that's just my thing. Yeah, that's my downtime. Like people go and have like massages and stuff, and I like sit there and like...
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it reflects the website's amazing. Please do go and check it out. Connect with Gemma. She's just doing incredible things. And as you can see, just like I said, the spirit of conversation that we've had today, it really just shows your genuine, sincere desire for positive birth for women. It shouldn't be, something that we want. It should just be, right? So that's what I really took away. Any final words, Gemma?
No, just thank you so much for having me. It's been brilliant just having a conversation and just being in your presence even, like as much as you're saying you're being in mine, I'm in your presence as well. And it's just really great to see, conversations happening more about birth, as well. So, yeah.
That's awesome, especially valuable ones like this. Gemma, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, thanks for listening in. This has been wonderful. And go and connect with Gemma and just say hello to and just acknowledge all the incredible work she's doing, especially if you need a doula. Located, you're in Central Coast, right?
Central Coast, yeah, New South Wales. So, yeah.
What a beautiful part of the world to be as well. Yeah. Amazing.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gemma.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. If you have the voice to empower the birthing world, speak up and reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. Until next time.